Welcome to the demo of Ashlar-Vellum 3D. The first thing we're going to do is show a demo of a part that we call the spanner. This is a part that we'll use to show the drafting assistant and the general features of Vellum, including integrated parametrics. The first thing to look at when looking at Vellum is the screen itself. The tools are all along the left side here, and they're all also grouped within subpalettes. So the line tools are gathered together, the arc tools are grouped together, and so on. The tools are all icon-based, and that makes them very easy to remember and recognize. The next thing to see is at the top of the screen we have the message line. And the message line, first of all, tells you which tool that you have selected, and then it tells you what to do with that tool step by step, and then some optional or power user behavior that you can use beyond that. At the bottom of the screen we have what we call the status line, and it's down here that you have the numerical data, so you can type in values for everything and define the sizes and locations of all your geometry as well. And it changes depending on which tool that you have selected. And then of course we have all the pull down menus like any Macintosh or Windows program, and layer control, and the display of your absolute coordinates. So we're going to build this part called the spanner, and to do that I'm going to start out with the connected line tool. The biggest thing about Vellum is the drafting assistant, and that's this intelligence that's built in that automates alignments and snaps and constraints. So to illustrate this, let me just start drawing a line. Now as you draw a line, if you get near horizontal, the drafting assistant senses that and snaps you right to it automatically. The same thing happens at 45 degrees and 90 degrees. So these alignments are part of the drafting assistant, and this is what happens automatically. And then as you move away from that point, it tells you things that you've moved perpendicular, or this is 45 degrees, and here's a tangent on the vertical, and so on. So it's constantly offering you options and some feedback about where you're going and where you might want to do from there. So we'll pick a point, we'll move up. As I move across here, then it starts to notice things like this, and it offers intersections because it can detect logical intersections like this, and it offers them to you. I could slide down this and find this intersection, move across a horizontal for a ways. Now one of the things that I notice in the message line is that it says control equals arc. That means that if I hold the control key, I temporarily get a little arc tool, and if I press and hold the mouse, then I get an arc that comes tangent off of my previous line. So I could get on a 45 degree line and get exact 90 degree arc, or I could get on a vertical and get this exact semicircle. In fact, I can slide down and find that intersection. Now I can slide across this, and now I'd like to draw a line that's horizontal across this area here, and I want it to end right below the midpoint of the line that's above. And initially I don't get any help from the drafting assistant, so what I'm going to do is go up for just a second, get on the line, slide across until it wakes up the midpoint, and then I just come down and it gives me an alignment off of that point, and there's the intersect that I wanted. So I can click there and draw my line. I can draw another line down here to this intersect, and I could slide across and hit that intersect. And then notice that as I'm at any particular intersection, I don't have cursor can move around a little bit, so I have a little bit of slop or a little bit of casualness that I can do here, but get exact accuracy. So this is why it almost feels like you're sketching in drawing these things, but yet you get exact precision because of the drafting assistant. And then when I come back in here, it says endpoint, so that I know I'm exactly on the point where I started. Now I'm going to draw a couple of circles, so I'm going to pick my circle tool. When you pick any tool in Vellum, the tool changes to that icon so that you get immediate feedback that yes, that's the tool that you've picked. This little bit of feedback makes all the difference in how easy it is to use Vellum because of that. So now I can come here, and I'd like to have a circle that's centered on this arc. But again, there's no help initially from the drafting assistant. All I have to do is, I don't click the mouse, I just go up and touch the arc by brushing over it. It wakes up the center point, and then I can go to that center point, and I see the word center so that I know I'm exactly on the center, and I can pull an exact arc here. Now, if I make a small arc, if I look at the bottom of the screen, this arc currently is, the diameter of it is 0.401, or this circle is. And I might say, well, this circle needs to be 0.975. So I type in 0.975, and it goes into the status line down here at the bottom of the screen. When I hit enter, the circle goes to exactly that size. Then I can come over here and I can wake up this point to get an alignment, and I also get alignments off of these points, and I can start a new circle right there. So the automatic aligning is the key feature of the drafting assistant, and this automatic snapping. Now I want to make a line that's tangent between these two circles. So the way you do it in Vellum is you just get on the circle. You get to where you see the word on, so you know you're snapped to the circle. You press and hold, and you pull away in a tangent direction. And it shows you the word tangent, and in fact it makes a line that's tangent to the arc, and it stays tangent as you swing around. Then I can go to this other circle, and I have many options here. I could be at a quadrant of that circle. I could be perpendicular to it. I could just be on it. Here's an endpoint, and there's the other tangent. So by seeing the word tangent, tangent on each end, there's no confusion about what I'm getting. So again, here's my other line, tangent, tangent, and it's just a matter of 2 clicks. Now I'm going to trim out these arcs that are inside this, and so I'm going to get my trim tool and use this red line as the boundary of a trim, but holding the shift key I can also select this red line, and those 2 lines act as the boundary of my trim operation, which allows me then to get rid of this and this. Okay, so by drawing this part, it gives a real simple illustration of the drafting assistant at work. The next thing to do then is to show the parametrics, and to do that we bring up some dimensions. So I bring up my dimension palette, I say show palette, and here's a dimension palette that's a floating palette. I can move this around. Now I'm going to scroll up just a little bit here, and I'm going to pick my dimension tool. Now again, there are several dimension tools in a sub palette, so you can pick which type of horizontal dimension you want. The cursor changes to that dimension tool so that you have a representation of your tool and some feedback. And then the drafting assistant will snap right to this endpoint. And then I can come over here and I could wake up these arcs and I could go to that center and snap right to that center. And then it puts a dimension right on there for me. And I can actually take this up. I could slide it clear outside if I wanted to. What I'm actually going to do, though, is I want to specify a value for this, and I can even go beyond that and assign the bottom of the screen. I can type in, for example, an L and make this dimension be a variable L and hook to this center and to this endpoint, and it puts a dimension there, which I'm going to be L divided by 5. And then I'll use my chain dimension tool. That's this one. And start at this endpoint, go to this endpoint, and let's call this one L divided by 4. And with one additional click, I get another variable which I can actually pull out here or slide it down just a little bit, and we'll call this one L divided by 6. So what this does is I can define all of these variables or all these dimensions with a single variable L, and the relationships are all set up. I'm going to say zoom all to get everything to fit in the screen. I can pick a vertical dimension tool and give a vertical dimension from here to here, and we'll slide this over here and call this H, and then we'll do another one from here to here, call this H divided by 4, and we'll do a couple of circular dimensions. This is one of my diameter dimensioning tools, and so I can just get on the circle. We'll call this D1, and then over here I can get on this and call this D2. And then one other, we'll put a radius dimension. I'll scroll down here a little bit, get a radius dimension and call that R. Okay, so I'll say zoom all again. So here's my object, and everything's defined in terms of the dimensions. There's a little bit more information I need to give this part, though, so that it can be resolved. What I'm going to do is pick my line tool, but I'm going to change the pen style to construction so that I add some construction lines from here to here, and then across to here and down, and then I'll put one across these points, and I'll put one from center to center. Now the reason I put these lines in so that if this line were to move up or down, I've tied it in with a connected line to this line so that both lines will move up and down together. They won't move separately. So thereby defining the relationships within this part. So now this part's completely specified and completely defined. So now all I have to do is say select all, and then I have a resolve command down here at the bottom, and so I pick that, and then it sees that I have 5 variables and it wants to know what I want to type into these. Well, D1 and D2, currently D1 is bigger than D2, but let's reverse that. Let's make D1 be something like 7/8. Let's make D2 be bigger than that, like make it be 1.25 inches. And then H, we'll make that be like 5.1, and L, let's make L be something like 8.25, something longer, so L is quite a bit longer. R, let's do R of 0.75, anything like that. It doesn't really matter. And then I can select a point to remain fixed if I want. I'll go ahead and fix this point, and then I say OK. And it reshapes and resizes. So I just say zoom all, and there's my part, all resized based on what I typed in. So parametrics is just a terrific tool for doing what-if scenarios and for doing design cases as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say undo to bring this back. And by the way, we have 8 levels of undo. Bring this back in and say zoom all again. And then if you want to get the variables, or if you want to get the actual numbers back in to all of these variables, instead of showing variables, show the numerical values, why I can select all of those variables and replace them with edit objects. So I'm going to select them by saying, I'm going to go to the selection mask. This allows me to say, give me everything that's blue. Give me all the blue objects and ignore everything else. So now when I close this, and now when I say select all, it has now selected all the blue things. I could also have done it by layer or by object type. And then I can edit these dimensions by going Edit and to Edit Objects. This dialog box tells me everything about these dimensions. And down here is a text field. And in the text field, instead of, if I go in here and just type a £, which is Shift 3, that tells Vellum to use the actual measured value in each of all of these dimensions. And so when I say Apply and close this, then I see the actual measured value in all of these cases. Now here's an interesting thing as well. I can select everything that's black. I can say give me all the black stuff, which allows me to say select all and pick the outside boundary, and then I can crosshatch this. Now one other thing to show you, notice that this dimension is 828 and this dimension is 0.74. If I select this corner and if I were to drag that corner and move it up, see how it changes, and notice that the values 964 and 138. So what we see here is associative hatching and associative dimensions. So associative dimensions are actually the opposite of parametrics, because with associative dimensions, if I change the part, then the dimensions update. But with parametrics, if I change the dimensions, then the part updates. Okay, so I'm going to say undo to get back to that. And then one of the final things to let you see is that I can go in and do detailing on some of this geometry as well. Say I want to do some tight little geometry changes here, but they're too small to make out clearly. In normal drafting, what you do is you break this area out. So I'm going to zoom out one time and use my little camera tool. This is actually the detail view tool. And I can specify a view scale, it says up here. So I'm going to go down here and put a view scale of 3. And then I'm going to give it a viewing frame of this area right here. And then I'll grab it and pull it off to the side. It blows up 3 times. And then I'll say zoom all. And I'm going to pan this around a little bit just so we can see that. See, there's the notch, and here's the corner that I'm looking at. And within this, then, I can go on this part, if, for example, and draw a circle here. But let's change the pen back to the normal style. And notice that that circle appears both places. And then if I use that to trim off some geometry, and then go in and select these boundaries, and trim off this, notice that all my changes happen here. So I have an associative detail view. But it's associative only in the sense that now if I go in and put a dimension on here, the dimension appears only in the view in which it was created. So I can put this dimension here, and the associativity stays just purely to this view as far as the dimensions are concerned. So these are the main features of Vellum, which would be the drafting assistant, and then the integrated parametrics, and the associativity. Next, we're going to do a demonstration of some architectural features in Vellum. And to do this, we're going to use the Smartwell tool. So the Smartwell tool is in the line tools. It's the very last line tool. And this is an interesting tool. I can pick this tool and then set the line width to be 6 inches, for example. And then I can draw a wall here. and it gives me a wall object, and again, because of the drafting assistant, it snaps right on horizontal and 45 and vertical and so on. And when I draw this wall, initially this wall is 9 feet long, 2 1/4 inches. Well, I might know it needs to be exactly 12 feet, so I can type in 12 with a single quote for foot, so 12 feet. When I hit enter, it goes to exactly that size. And then I can go and I can pull a second wall off of this, and I come here, and now notice that it snaps again. And notice in the message line it says shift equals flip. That means that if I hold the shift key, the wall will flip inside or outside. So I'm going to leave it on the outside, and when I let go of this, the mouse key, look at the corner, it cleans up. And if I draw another wall, that corner cleans up. If I do a 45-degree wall, if I come into a T, all of these corners clean up automatically. So I could put a little a short wall and then leave a gap for a doorway and tie into this, for example, and I could make a hallway. And obviously this is a very small or a very out-of-scale house, but you can see the walls. In fact, even if I draw some odd wall like this, and if I delete that wall, they all heal. And I can do things like I could take the entire hallway and slide it down somewhere over here, and everything heals and cleans up. Again, I'm going to say undo. And then normally in a house you're going to, of course, put doors and windows on this, so you can go to the File menu and say Symbol. And in here I have a symbol folder, and I've got a bunch of symbols. So I have some architectural symbols and some door symbols, and in fact here is a single door. So I say Open. Now, not only is this a symbol, but it is specifically a parametric symbol. That is to say that all I have to do is type in whatever values I want here. Initially it comes up blank, and I can type in different values here, and it'll then resize and reshape the wall and the door, the door symbol based on what I type in. So with a single door, I've got every possible variation of this door covered. So I don't need a whole symbol library for this door. All I need is one door. So we'll type in 35 degrees. We know it's a 6-inch wall, and let's put a 28-inch door. Now there's a handle point right here, this little black triangle, and so I'm going to go off on the screen, and with this little bullseye cursor, tell it to put that little handle point right here. And then when I say OK, it places the door and it cuts the wall. Turns out that if I move this door somewhere else, the wall heals. In fact, if I bring it up onto here, it all heals. And then, in fact, it says in the message line, it says Control equals copy. So I can hold down the Control key and move a copy of this door. If I want this door to swing out instead of swing in, I can just use the mirror tool and get right on the middle here and swing the door, just mirror the door to go to the outside, or mirror it through the center so it hinges on the other side. And then I can go and, like another common thing to do is to put dimensions on this, so I can bring up my dimension palette, grab my dimension tool, and then I can hook on to an endpoint here and an endpoint here, and this dimension shows up exactly. And then I can come down and say, well, how far is it from here to here? And oh, I need to change tools, of course, so I go here and pick this tool and go for a vertical distance from there to there, and let's take this up and slide it up to something like that, and so on. So you can sketch your walls very quickly, and then you can add your dimensions and your door and window symbols and do very quick, very powerful layouts of architectural things in Vellum. Let's look at a demonstration of the new version Vellum 3.0, which contains 2D design and drafting capabilities as well as 3D wireframe modeling and auto surfacing. To do this demonstration, we're going to draw a part that we call the bearing flange, and it will illustrate a lot of the features of Vellum 3.0. So we'll start out again with the connected line tool. One of the key elements in Vellum in general, of course, is the drafting assistant, which gives me the automatic alignment at 45s and 90 and horizontal and so on like this. I'm going to go and change the line style here to a visible line style to make the line thicker. But as I move away from this point, then I will get other alignment opportunities. And then the drafting assistant will also see logical intersections like these and offer them to me, but I'm going to ignore that one and move on over here. Drop down, find a corner here, and then find that intersection. So it's the drafting assistant which gives me the ability to find these alignments automatically. Now we can actually jump right into a 3D viewing situation, so that instead of looking at the top view as we are currently, I could look at an isometric view or a trimetric view, which will then look more like this. And then from here, notice that as I get above some of these points, like for example here in the corner it says there align Z. So now I'm actually moving up in the vertical direction away from the plane that this object is lying in. So now what I have in essence is the ability to go on and sketch and find alignments for this part in 3D space. So the drafting assistant gives me 2D alignment, but also 3D alignment. So I have a 3D sketch tool now, and I can just go and find all these different points and align off of them and finish this part. Now normally you would draw this bottom L shape and then extrude it up to get the top L shape, but I wanted to show the sketching in 3D. So let's finish off this little L shape. I'm going to draw a line from here to here. Now actually I need that same exact line in all these other corners. Well, notice in the message line it says Control equals copy previous. So if I hold the Control key, then with one click I get the same exact line in all of these locations. And these are the type of little productivity enhancers that you find throughout Vellum. Now I want to put a base on this thing, and there's many ways to do that. What I'm going to choose to do is use my corner trim tool and make a corner between this line and this line, and there I have a base. Now I'd like to give that base some thickness, and again there's many ways to do that. I could extrude some things and then do some trimming, or I could just select these four corners and then pull straight down. So I got to get all four of these corners here with the shift key held down, and then grab one of these corners and pull this straight down. Now by doing this, I'll also have the ability, it of course moves the lines that I'm working with, so I need to go in here and grab my connected line tool and put a new line in here. Now again, where is this going to end? Well, the drafting assistant lets me go down for a moment, touch that point to wake it up, and there's the alignment that I need. And then I could go actually down and finish there, and then I can go from here straight back to that end point. Okay? Now I also have some interesting tools to use here. I have a trackball. So I'm going to bring up this trackball. I'm actually going to pull it off here to the right. And then when I roll this trackball, then I actually get the part rotating in 3D space. So I can look at this thing from any angle, including, I can say, show me from the right side view and show me from trimetric. Now, as a designer, many times you want to make some changes here. You can say, well, you know, this face here, if I pull this out, I could make that thicker, or halfway back, or wherever. But I'm going to go ahead and just bring it back roughly where it was before. But I can do other types of manipulations like that. Like I could take this and pull this forward to tilt that. Or I could get this corner plus this corner with the shift key, and then I can pull this forward, and I can get a kind of a double sloped face like that. Or I could take the whole part and say, you know, I think it's too tall, so I can shrink the whole thing down. So again, as a designer, you might want to make these kinds of manipulations. And in fact, I'm going to do one more because I think that this corner or the base is just a little too thick. So I'm going to take this and bring it up just a bit like that. Now I'm going to do some other operations. Let me put a notch in this end corner here. So I'll use the connected line tool. Let me say zoom all just to get this as large as I can. And then this notch, I just go and I find a midpoint, I drop down a little bit. And these alignments, again, happen automatically because of the drafting assistant. And then using those red lines to act as trim boundaries, I can trim off these lines here. Now that line can be useful. The one that's left there, let's take this line, grab it by its endpoint, and put it right on that endpoint there, and just place it into the corner. So these are the kinds of things that the drafting assistant makes it very easy to do. Now I'm also going to go and put a rounded corner here, so I'll use my fillet tool and just put a fillet right there. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Initially it's 0.25. Well, let's make it be 0.4. When I type 0.4 and hit enter, then it resizes to the new size. And I'll put another one there and another one here to get a rounded corner on that face. And then let me put another fillet here, and we'll make this one be 0.6, and we'll do the same thing here. Now again, here's a line that I should take advantage of. Let's take that line, grab its endpoint, and put it right on the end of the arc. And then using the message line, it says control equals copy. So I could grab that endpoint, hold the control key, and move a copy of it over to that endpoint. And then I'll use the circle tool, and then let me draw a circle right here, which is centered on that existing arc. So I got some concentric alignment there. And I'd like to actually drill a hole through this part. So in wireframe modeling, the way you represent that is you select the circle and you say extrude. Now here's a box that I need to fill in some value. I mean, what do I type in here though? Because I don't know how long this line is, so I don't know what to type in. One of the nice things about Vellum is that there's a little asterisk inside many dialog boxes next to some fields. And if there's an asterisk here, that means that I can use the cursor to enter the values for these data fields. So all I know is I want to extrude from this endpoint, and I press and hold, and I drag down, and I release, and it fills in the value for me, and I say OK. Now a single line on that hole is all I need to represent that hole. So simplicity is very good for the surfaces that are coming here in a moment. In fact, I could choose to surface this object. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say select all, and then I'm going to auto surface this. In the 3D menu, the new version 3.0 has a new command called auto surface. The nice thing about the auto surface command is that it interprets your model and automatically places surfaces on all the right locations. So if I change the color of this object to something like yellow, for example, it will make yellow lines, but I can go in and change the viewing type to a shaded object, and we get a solid looking color shaded object. Okay, but now I'm going to go ahead and go on with this. Now, because this is a wireframe modeler, I'm going to ungroup this object and delete the surfaces and go back to where we were, but now we need to change those back to having the style be like a visible outline. Now I can go on then and continue wireframe modeling, and then when I'm further along with my modeling, I can auto surface it again. So what I want is I want to make this block here. I'd like to have an identical copy of this block, but mirrored back behind this area here, and using this line as a mirror line. So I can just select this object. I can say select all, and use my mirror tool. Now I'm going to zoom out one time just so we can see this happen here, and give it a mirror line. Now it says in the message line control equals copy, so I hold the control key and I draw a mirror line from here to here, and it flips it right through there. Now we'll say zoom all. Now it turns out too that I don't need this central rectangle anymore, so I need to select those lines and delete them. There's many ways to do that. Just to illustrate a concept, I will go to the front view, put a selection fence around this, and then when I go back to trimetric, I can see that those are selected. I can delete them with the backspace key, and they're gone. Now I'm going to pick a different view. I happen to want a view that looks more off to the kind of the side like this, a little bit more in front. This is a particular view that I happen to want. So to keep this view, I can go to the Views menu and say Define View. So here's all my standard views, and I can say, well, I want a new view, and these are all the numbers for this particular view. So I just say OK. But I'm also going to go in here and change this to have a 0 and a 0 and a 1, so that my vertical, my up in terms of the way I see things, is along the z-axis. So now when I set this as the view, I can pick view 1, and now I have vertical lines here, and I have a new view out in front. Now I'm going to go on and I'm going to build kind of a domed flange on top of this part, and again there's probably many ways to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this line and this one and this one and use those and sweep them over the top about the center of this part. So I will use the revolve command in this case. Now what do I need to do here? Well, I need to fill some values in here. Clearly the sweep angle ought to be 180 degrees, not 360, and I'm going to use 2 steps instead of 8, and you'll see why. And then, now here's 6 boxes. What do I type in here? I really have no idea. And it doesn't matter because I've got the asterisk here. And remember, anytime you see that, it means use the cursor to enter values. It's asking for the axis of revolution. Well, isn't it true that the axis goes from here, press and hold and drag, to there? When I let go, it fills in all these values. I say, OK, and there's my flange. Now, it turns out that for the surfacing, I want to get rid of this line and this one, because that would be a line running across a face, and it doesn't serve any purpose. So I want to keep things simple. So there's one on the back face, and there's actually a face here that has a couple of lines that I ought to get rid of as well. Now I know I have duplicates here, but that's okay, so I'll just get rid of those. And then let's go on with this. Let's say zoom all here. The next thing I'd like to do is I want to put kind of a tapered slot in the front of this part. And so now we can kind of see how Vellum handles working in 3D as far as the different work planes. If I go and pick my circle tool, and if I go in here and touch the circle to wake up its center and go, and I draw a circle, it initially goes parallel to the top and bottom face because my current work plane is set to top. Well, if I want to draw on the front of this part, it makes sense that I ought to go and change my plane to front. And sure enough, it's like putting a sheet of glass on the front of the part, and when I touch this and go here, now I can draw circles right on that front. Now I'm gonna zoom in here as well. The next, I want to draw another circle using a different tool, and I'd like to align the bottom of the circle right off of this point and off of that point, and here's the intersection that I want, and I'll put a circle right there. Now I'm going to change my view to front, and here I can draw a tangent line. So I can come here and get my connected line tool, draw a line from here, press and hold to here, and notice that I see tangent, tangent, and that way I get exactly what I want because I want 2 tangent lines here. And then using these 2 lines on the outside as the boundaries of a trim, I can get rid of this and this. I'll go back to trimetric, or back to view 1. Now I'm also going to put kind of a notch in the bottom of this part. So I'm going to use my arc tool, and I'm going to start an arc right here, give it a radius about that high, and then I'm going to come over here and draw an arc to there. Now I need that same arc over on this side, so I'm just going to use the mirror tool, give it a mirror line, hold the control key because control equals copy, give it a control copy there, and then go and finish this off by putting in a line from here to here. Now I'm going to take all of these objects that I've just drawn, and I'm going to extrude them through the part. So I'm going to pick that line and these other ones, and then all the objects of this tapered slot, and I will extrude them through the part. So I say extrude, and how far am I going to go, and which direction? Well, it's going to go from this endpoint back to this endpoint. That's like the center to the center of the part, and I get a value here. I say OK, and then if I change the view to front, I can actually trim out these lines that are down here. Now I can use this as the boundary of a trim and that to get rid of, okay, let me do this again. I need this line and this line to act as boundaries, and then I can get rid of that and that because there's 2 lines, one in front, one in back, that, and I can trim out those pieces that are underneath the notch there. The next thing to do here is to put a bolt pattern along this flange area here. So I'm going to go in and pick my circle tool, and I'm going to wake up some points here, and I'm going to draw a circle. Now you can even draw things that are far too large and then specify a size like 0.4, and when I hit enter it becomes exactly that size. And then I can go and I can extrude that circle through the part, so I can say extrude. And what's the extrusion distance? Well, if I zoom in here, isn't it true that the extrusion distance is the distance from here, drag and hold, and let go there, and it fills in a value for me. I say OK. And then when I come back out here, I can take that extruded hole and I can do a polar duplicate of that. So I say polar duplicate. Now what do I do here? Well, I want 5 copies. I want one at 0, 90, and also at the 45s and on the other side. So, and then now here's an asterisk for the center point. Isn't it true that the center point would be right there? When I click here, it fills in these values. The total angle should be 180 instead of 360. Turns out I want to keep these upright, and I'm going to use a reference point right on the center of that circle. So I fill in these values like so, and when I say OK, it puts the bolt holes around the part like that. And then one final thing that we'll do here is put something on this sloped face. How do you handle a non-orthogonal plane? We've drawn things on the top plane, and we've drawn things on the front plane, but what's something about an odd plane like this? Well, it's actually quite simple. I'm going to zoom in here, and I can, what I need to do is, I have my normal planes here, but none of these work, so I need to define a new plane. But there's actually even an easier way. I can say 3-point plane, because I know 3 points, don't I? There's 1 point, there's a second point, and then anywhere along here it would be a third point. And when I do that, I actually can bring up my triad to show that when I come, well, if I say zoom all here again, just to look for just a second here, and let me change this over to a wireframe. I have a triad that shows my work planes, and this triangular shape apparently, and it actually is tilted back to match the face of that object. So when I zoom in here, I know that I can draw objects right on there. For example, if I get my polygon tool, I could grab this point and run right across here. Let's try that. Here's my polygon. I slide right across here, and I'm going to be able to draw a polygon right on that face then. And when I roll the trackball, you'll see that sure enough, it's right there on that face. Okay? So when I go back out to view 1, and when I say zoom all, which is going to be in the arrange menu, then let's make a little pocket here. Let's give that some depth. So I'm going to say extrude that part, and we can even just type in a value here, like something like -0.2, and when I hit enter, it gives it a depth, and so now it has a kind of a pocket feature there. So now we'll go on and put that over onto the other side. So let me change my plane back to front, and use my mirror tool and give it a mirror line that'll go right through the center of the slot, and there, it flips it right over to the other side. So this is the completed part. By doing this part, we get to see all kinds of features of vellum. We get to see the 3D sketching and the stretching things around, and then the mirroring and the revolve and the extrude, and how we work with different faces and odd faces, and build many different types of objects. And much of the most common operations of 3D are handled here. Well, now, you see the problem we kind of run into as we get more complex. The object gets harder and harder to make out because of all the wires. Well, that's the beauty of the new version 3.0, is that now you can select all, and then you can just auto surface this entire object. And the great thing about the auto surface is that it generates all the object surfaces automatically, the holes and the curves, and then these are all NURB surfaces that you can take out to other programs for doing rendering and animation, and also to manufacturing and milling. So now that the surfaces are on here, I can go and change the color of this object to something like magenta, and then I can show this either as a wireframe as we see it now, or I can do automatic hidden line removal on it, and I can also do perspective and color shaded views as well. So I'm deselecting this, and then we'll go and change it to be, first of all, we'll pick the hidden line option. So I'll go here and select view. Okay, so it's currently in the wireframe mode, but if I pick hidden lines, then it will go through and it will re-render itself as a hidden line object. Now this object can be, we can take this and rotate this object in space to some other new orientation, and then it will re-render as a hidden line object. And then we can also go and change the view mode to a shaded, and we can see it as a color shaded object as well. So this shows us the ability to draw objects quickly in wireframe and take advantages of the benefits of wireframe, but then we can switch and auto surface it and see it as a solid looking object as well. So this becomes terribly useful for communication of your ideas to your peers and to your co-workers and to your clients. But this isn't the whole story. The rest of the story goes on to say, well, now that I've got this part designed, I want to go on and do drafting with this. And so to get this thing into a drawing, we want to have a drawing format that has 4 views and title block and border and whatnot. And to do that, we pick a single command called Sheet into View. When you pick this command, you get a layout option, and you have a dialog box here with many different layout choices. And I'm going to pick the one here that's 4 views for a C-size drawing, and just leave the scale at 1. So this will have 4 views already set up on it, a C-size title block and border with the title with the detailed views, top, front, right, and isometric. When I say OK, then I'll go in and I'll say Zoom All. So I go to the Arrange menu, say Zoom All. And there's the 4 views already set up and ready to go. Now in each of these views we'll go in and change them so that they are now going to display as hidden line drawings, because that's going to be the most common thing to want to look at these as hidden lines. So you set up all 4 views to do that. Once this is done, then we can put in our dimensions as well. And you may choose to show this final one as a rendered object. So you could go in and have this show as a shaded object, and then also even change it to view 1. And then I can bring up my dimension palette. I can say Show Palette, and I can put dimensions on these objects. I can activate this view and dimension from this endpoint to this endpoint, and put dimensions on there just without a problem. If I want to work certain objects on the front, I change the plane to front so that my triad, we're looking right at it, and then I can put a dimension in this view that would go something like that. So you have the ability to do these types of drawings and set up an entire drawing as well. And that would be the Vellum story, is to generate wireframe quickly and work with it as much as you want, and then auto surface it, and then go on and continue to make Vellum drawings from it. Let's now look at the model of a stopwatch, and let's see what it takes to build an element of this watch and put it into place, and thereby showing how to use certain elements of 3D and the 3D space with the auto surfacing in the new release Vellum 3.0. So we'll work on this model, and we'll show it as a shaded object. And what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll replace one of these buttons. We'll go in and build this button here and go through the process of what that's like. So we'll go back to wireframe mode. We'll bring up the trackball. And we'll take this around to a different view, a view over on the other side, something like this. And just for now, we'll take this button and we'll delete it. Then we'll just zoom into this area here. And this is where we'll work. For simplicity, we'll turn off all the layers so that only the body of the stopwatch shows, and the rest of the objects are hidden, just to simplify things and speed things up. Now what we can do is we can work directly in this view. We don't have to change anything really. We'll just go ahead and grab the connected line tool, and you'll notice that the elements, the points of the model are still alive and awake. I'm going to change my plane. We'll make sure that the plane is set to front, which it is, and so we'll go ahead and show the triad so that we can see the triad here. So we'll wake up this point, and we'll come out here, and we'll just start, just for convenience sake, we'll start the button right here. So we'll start moving up here, and this first distance will be 0.16, and then we'll move across a distance, a small distance because it's a very small ledge, 0.06. Come up for the top of the button, and this distance is 0.275. And then we'll come across half of the top of the button so that we can rotate or revolve this button about its center. And this distance will be 0.185. Now the button actually has a rounded corner, so we'll go ahead and put a fillet on this that's going to be 0.03. So it'll be a fairly small fillet, but nonetheless it'll be a rounded corner, so it won't be quite so square. And we can actually even zoom into this again. And then we'll take this feature, just the contour, and we'll revolve this. We'll use the revolve command. We do want to take it through 360 degrees, and the revolve, we'll go ahead and have it have 4 steps, and that's fine. Now it wants to know the axis of revolution. That's what it's asking for. Well, the axis of revolution, because I have this little asterisk here, the asterisk means use the cursor to enter the values. So I don't have to type anything in here. In fact, when it first comes up, by default everything is a 0. And what we can do then is just highlight this box and go here and hit the enter, or pick this endpoint, press and hold, and pull a line right along that perpendicular direction, which will be in the current Y direction. And it fills in all my values for me. And then I check this box here that says revolve surface. And not only will it revolve these items, but it will also put a surface on those, on the revolved shape as well. So it auto surfaces at the same time as doing the revolve. And there's a revolved object, which we can then go ahead and say, view all of this as shaded, if we wanted to, and we could just investigate this and check it out as a shaded form. So there's the button all rendered out for us. And now the next thing to do then is to position it onto the work surface, which will be the edge of the clock there. So to do that, we'll need to define a work plane that's going to fit that. So we'll go in and go to 3D and say 3-point plane, because we can certainly define a new plane. In fact, we'll back out just one time here. All the objects are showing for now, but I can define a new plane that would, for example, start at the midpoint, and that would be the origin. The X direction would go off in this direction, and the Y direction would go off in that direction, and my triad now shows tilted back to match that. So if we zoom back in here just for ease of working with this, now I can select this object, and I can move it into position with the help of the drafting assistant. So now we'll use the move tool, actually grab the move tool here, and I can highlight this thing by touching the bottom curve, and there I see it will highlight the word center for me. So now I can click on the bottom center to indicate my beginning point, click and release, and then I can go over to the face here and touch the midpoint and get an alignment across the face in that direction, and come up here and touch the midpoint up there and get an alignment in that direction, and come to the intersect right in the middle of the face, and I can click and it will position the button right onto the center of that face. So now we've located the center of the button onto the correct location on the face. The next step then will be to rotate it into position using the rotate tool. Okay, so there it is positioned correctly. But if I deselect it, you can see that it's actually, the center is okay, but it's rotated, it's kind of stuck into the face of that. So we can now rotate the part by selecting it, and we can go get the rotate tool. And we'll make sure that our plane is still front. And actually the plane is currently set to the slope face. We'll set plane to front, because we want to get the z-axis pointing in the same direction as the axis of rotation that we want to use. And so now I can come in here and again highlight this, or just brush the edge to wake up the center, go to the center, because that's going to be the pivot point of the rotation. And then come out onto this end point, because that's the beginning point that I want to grab, and then come to a point on the surface, which will be, for example, down here near the end of this part. If I come right to that midpoint or that perpendicular point on the face, that will give it the ending angle to go to, and now it will be rotated into position. And there it is, rotated in position. And we're done with that. Now just for convenience sake and just for illustration sake, we'll do it again and show you the same process, but using the wireframe method. Because usually you won't be building things in the shaded mode like this, but it's just useful to see the fact that you can do this. So we'll do it again in the wireframe mode, just moving it into position and rotate. So here's the model back in wireframe, and we can then just use the move tool, grab the center of this part, and then we can find a midpoint and get in alignment, find a midpoint, get in alignment, and then place the midpoint right there. Then we can change the plane back to front so that we can rotate this thing properly. Get the z-axis pointing in the direction of the axis of rotation. Use the rotate tool. Pick the center as the center point of the rotation. The end point out here, or the quadrant point, is the beginning point of the rotation, and this point along this line is the ending point of the rotation, and that rotates it into position. So either one of these methods works just fine and gets your part located in space using the drafting assistant. And once we're done, we wind up with the shaded watch.